Hey guys, welcome back to LS Vintage Design. How's everyone doing? I hope you're having a great Tuesday and I hope you had a lovely long weekend. Today we are going to talk about how you can decorate fall vintage outside. And you might be going, what? How do I do that? Well, I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. So come on, let's jump into the video. Okay guys, so decorating outside's a little different than decorating inside, especially using vintage. Because anything vintage decor that's been outside, depending on where you live, has been through maybe lots of weather, rain, maybe even snow, or maybe you've had extreme heat and sun. So finding vintage decor that's in good shape is really, really hard. So what's the point of my video then, right? Well, I'm going to give you some ways that you can create either that vintage look or you can actually use vintage decor to create outside vintage decor. First way is, you know how we all have those welcome signs, or I don't, but a lot of people have those welcome or fall y'all or those kind of signs that when you walk up to their front door, it's kind of leaning against the wall, kind of in the way, but it's words. It might have like a painted pumpkin or something on it. And most of them are from Walmart, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. Okay, those are great. And if you want to keep doing those, by all means. But what if you want to give it a vintage feel, a vintage vibe? What can you do? So one way you can create that sign for your front door that has a more vintage feel to it is to use an old piece of fence. Cut it down to the 2 or 3 boards, cut it to the height you want, but it'll have that weathered, really good vintage feel. And you might be going, that's great, but my fence, I don't want to tear it apart. Check your neighbors. I guarantee you somebody around you somewhere is putting up a new fence, because these fences age, they fall down, people replace them. And you can just, from their trash pile, take a little section. You might be surprised. That's a very economical way that will create a truly vintage vibe right at your front door. So what are some other ways that you can give your outside decor that vintage feel? And one way is to use a vintage inside decor that maybe is not your style, or you wouldn't use it, but you find it at a thrift store. It's clearly 70s. You think it's cool, but you're not going to use it inside. Still get it. You know why? Because you can take all of this pretty leaf stuff off, and it's vintage, but it looks good because it was inside. So you can take all of this apart and put it on a wreath form. So then you've created your own vintage wreath using a vintage decor, but it's inside decor that you're now going to use outside, because you wouldn't use it inside your home for what it's for. That's a great way to do it. Another great way to get that vintage look outside, of course, is to always, if you have a table outside and you want to maybe have some nice fall meals on those nice crisp afternoon evenings, you could use your vintage placemats outside, your vintage dishes, and create a really nice table setting. You can also find vintage lanterns in a black or rust color that also give off that great fall vibe feel. You can hang them from plant hooks by your front door, put a little battery operated candle in there. You can use them on your back porch as well. So there are ways that you can get that true vintage look outside without having to find vintage outside decor that actually still looks good, because it's probably not going to happen unless you find new old stock that's never been displayed. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure and give it a thumbs up. Also, if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button with that little bell. We have a lot of ideas coming your way. And guess what? September kicks off our next 3 months of cooking vintage. I will be announcing our next cooking vintage, the recipe, what we're cooking, and the date next week. So again, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. I will see you on Friday with our next vintage video. Bye guys.